Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I'm bringing you guys what you've been asking for a while. Updated solo builds. And some new ones, like this, the Death Knight. Now I did do this loosely based on the Death Knight from World of Warcraft, the Ice version. And I have to say, I was definitely surprised at how well it turned out. So this is an AoE solo build, and what that means is it uses a lot of AoE damage to pretty much kill things, sustain, all that stuff. It's a really fun build, and remember, solo builds are not meant to be done like group wise, unless you're playing with like two solo builds together and you're like wanting to complete a veteran dungeon and you're tired of groups, that kind of thing, or you're looking for something challenging to play. This is why these builds are made, is to challenge the person, and a lot of times it can help you become a better player because it helps you learn mechanics of dungeons really well, because you're learning it single-handedly. You're not learning it with a group. You're learning how to deal with stuff in a single situation, and it helps you understand the mechanics a little bit more when it's just you in there. So with that, let's get right into the build. As you can see, we are rocking a 17k magic, a 24k health. Now, all my solo builds now have 24k health because after doing a lot of testing, 24k health is pretty much where you need to be. We do have a 28k stamina with a 1040 magic recovery. It's really important to have that magic recovery on a lot of these builds because you're using a mix of abilities. As you can see, unbuffed, we have a 2273 weapon damage with a 1571 spell damage. We do have a 38% weapon crit, 22% spell crit, and our resistances are coming in at a whopping 20,000 each. Now, the good thing about this build is it's well-rounded, so very well-rounded. Moving on down here, we do have the Lady Munda Stone for extra resistances. We are using Tri-Stat food. It is necessary for this particular build to use Tri-Stat food, and we do have major savagery at all times. Remember, when you're playing solo, you're not going to want to use pots a lot of the times because it's kind of a waste when you have the ability to buff yourself, and it makes it a lot easier. So moving on to the gear, guys. Food wise, Tri-Stat food is going to be your best option. Secondly, you can use the weapon pots if you want to, but honestly the tri-pots are going to come in more handy with this particular build. And you can also use dual wield on this build. Sword and shield as well if you want to tank with it. It tanks really well. So looking at the sets, we are using Ice Heart. Ice Heart is a phenomenal set. Even though the little bit of spell critical it does give, it does help. When you deal critical damage, you have a 20% chance to gain a damage shield that absorbs 9,976 damage for 6 seconds. While the damage shield holds, you deal 1,031 frost damage to all enemies within 5 meters every 1 second. This effect can occur every 6 seconds. So this thing can go off constantly, guys, and it will, because you're going to be doing so much damage with crits. It's going to constantly proc. Moving on to the first gear set, we are using the Night Mothers with this. Now, why Night Mothers? You're kind of probably wondering. Night Mothers does allow for a lot of weapon physical penetration, because it grants major fracture, and that's the main reason. We get our spell penetration from nothing. We're not worried about spell penetration. We're worried about this. Now, you can build this build using something like Hundings, or using the Kvetch's Gladiator is a really good set for this. If you can, and the best set for it is Advancing Yodakai. So if you can get that, that's a really good setup. But Night Mothers works for this build really well. Like I said, you can use those other two sets. And if you do that, you can take the Lord or the Lover Mundus. You will be lower in resistances, which does throw this build off a little bit. So moving on to the other set. The other set we are running is Dragon. Now, why Dragon, you're asking? Well, 1, it gives you magic recovery. 2, it gives you 4% healing taken. And number 4, it gives you, or the 4-piece, the max health helps. But the 5-piece is what it's really about. And here's why. Because our ultimates, like this, cost us 107. And then if we use our permafrost, it's only 170. So it's a really good set for that. And we are running 3 jewelry with the weapons as well. So let's go over the traits real quick. So starting with the traits on the helm, we do use infused on the big pieces. On the smaller pieces, because this is a heavy setup, I do have some light and medium setups as well. But with this being a heavy setup, you want to use infused on the big pieces. The smaller pieces, you want to go reinforced on the shoulder and boots, and Nirnhoned on the belt and gloves. The belt you want light, and the helm you want medium. The rest heavy. The reason why, it gives you the most resistances. Moving on to the jewelry, we are running 2 weapon traits here with healthy jewelry, and then we are using an infused necklace with magic recovery. Moving on to the weapons, we are using 2 weapons, a sword and a bow. The sword itself is the greatsword of the dragon. It's infused with frost damage, and the bow itself is infused with weapon damage. We want to boost our character up as much as possible. So that is that. Now we're going to move on to the skills. Sorry, I keep moving around a little bit. So make sure you get all your class passives. It's really important to get your class passives on this build. Two-handed, you want to get all the passives. As you can see, I have other skills unlocked because I was testing a lot of different things, and I don't have my two-handed passives. Oh my gosh, this might improve things a little bit. I was testing it without. Oh my god, I didn't even know. Yeah, make sure you get all your passives. It's really important. On to light armor passives, top 3. Medium armor, you want the top 2 and the bottom 1. And then heavy armor, you want all of them. Moving on to world skills. Soul magic, get these 2 especially for solo play, because if you do die, you can use resurrect yourself without a soul gem every 1 hour. And this will allow you to fill empty soul gems you have or have found on bosses, things like that. This build, by the way, is awesome at clearing delves, public dungeons, dolmens, the things in Somerset, I don't remember what they're called anymore, the abyssal geysers, all that stuff. It's really amazing for that. It's really good at soloing dungeons too, on normal and veteran. Some can be done on veteran. So, moving on to Fighters Guild, you want to make sure you get all the passives in the Fighters Guild. In Mages Guild, you only want Persuasive Will, and you can get Magic Controller if you are going for Inner Light instead of the Fighters Guild Evil Hunter. I suggest using Evil Hunter, it just works out better. You don't need any Psijic Order abilities on this. I've tried them, you don't really need them. Undaunted, the Spike Bone Shield, and then get the 2 passives here. No Alliance War skills. It's a nice thing about this. So, we are a Dark Elf, so make sure you get all your passives. You can use any race for this, by the way. You don't have to be a Dark Elf. Dark Elf just happens to be the race I chose, because it gives max magicka and stamina. On top of that, it gets more max magicka, and then it gets increased frost damage. So, by a little bit. High Elf would be a better choice, but I like the Dark Elf. Moving on, Alchemy, medicinal use, and then provisioning, you want Gourmand and Connoisseur. This is just to improve the timers on your food. And then the Alchemy is to reduce the cost of the timers on your potions. So, looking at the skills here, starting with the first skill on our bar, this is Brawler. This is a really good ability, especially this update. It does decent damage, not insane. You also gain a damage shield that absorbs 221 damage for 8 seconds, and when you buff yourself with Rally, just so you can see, holy cow, I gotta stop this. When you buff yourself with Rally, the shield strength goes up, so you want to keep Rally up as much as possible, and the buff on your back bar, because it boosts this shield insanely. And this shield grows in strength for each enemy hit. There's a reason why I'm at this boss. I just want to show this build off. You know, it's all its intents and purposes. So, oops. Alright. So, going on to the next skill. Now, this is kind of an odd one, because we are using gripping shards, and as you can see, it doesn't do a lot of damage. It does 726 frost damage every 1 second for 12 seconds, and reduces the movement speed of enemies hit by 30% for 3 seconds. On cast, enemies in the area are immobilized for 3 seconds. This helps with control of the mobs. You can drop it, keep them locked down, and then AoE them down really fast. It really helps. Next ability we have on our bar is Bone Shield. If you want to go for something more DPS-like, though, you can drop Bone Shield and put something else here. But Bone Shield is going to be your ultimate survival skill. So, as you can see, this thing absorbs 34%, or the strength of the shield is 34% of your max health, and it returns 45% of any direct damage absorbed back to the enemy, which is pretty much all of it. All allies near you can activate the ball, this energy, if you're playing with more than one person, so it's kind of a nice trade-off. Next, we have Rally. Rally is a very powerful buff. It also is a powerful heal. As you can see, it heals for 867 health every 2 seconds while active, and an additional 1,345 health when Rally expires. But the final heal is increased by up to 564% in proportion to the length of time Rally has been activated. So you want to activate Rally, like I showed, and then let it run its course. And Rally will also proc your buff, your minor toughness of the Warden. So as you can see, 26k health with a 28k stamina. Next ability is Evil Hunter. We have this here for major savagery. That's it. We want that major savagery. We want that high crit rate. We don't want to be using a bunch of things to keep us off our focus of doing our job of solo play. So having this really helps. Having Rally really helps because it gives you major brutality too. So moving on to the next ability on our bar. This is Flawless Dawnbreaker. We have this here for the weapon damage. It's also our high-end ultimate. We're going to be popping this as much as we can because the more damage we do, the faster things die. Moving on to the back bar. Now, the back bar is kind of unusual for a lot of people because I get asked this all the time. Where do you use Venom Arrow over Poison Injection? Venom Arrow, because of it, it can knock an enemy off balance. It also does decent damage up front and over time. Not a whole lot, but decent. And then on top of that, we also have Endless Hail next, which is an AoE. We have this here for that purpose. Next ability we have on our bar is for resource management only. We do not use this for the major brutality buff. We use Rally for that. You can drop Rally if you want to and use Northern Wind. It is a good trade-off. So you have a good heal. And this will heal you for 16% of your max health and an additional 10% of your max health over 10 seconds. But you have to pop this a lot, and you go through a lot of magicka with this. So, just warning you now. That's the reason why I chose Rally instead. Now, we'll leave Northern Wind for now. But the next ability we have on our bar is Bullnetch. We have this here, like I said, for stamina return. But it doesn't offer major brutality and major sorcery. We don't need major sorcery because this is not affected by major sorcery. This is only affected by your max health. Next, we have Ice Fortress. Now, Ice Fortress is an amazing ability. It gives you Major Ward, Major Resolve. It also grants you minor protection, reducing your damage taken by 8%. Now, the nice thing about that is you can also have this ability up, which gives you major protection. We'll get to that in a second. So, again, Evil Hunter, Major Savagery, and then, like I said, Permafrost. Now, why not Northern Storm? Northern Storm is good, but it gives magicka, and we're not using a magicka build, so Permafrost is better for this, and Permafrost still does the same amount of damage, has the same negative debuff, and gives major protection. And it does it does damaging an enemy 3 times with the storm, will stun them for 3 seconds. So it's a nice CC. And that is the skills, guys. Moving on now to the champion points. Starting with the red tree, we have 66 in the Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 22%. And this is a universal almost setup for all these builds, just to let you know. 37 into Thick Skin. This reduces damage taken from damage over time effects by 15%. Then we have 56 in a Hardy, reducing damage taken from physical poison and disease damage by 12%, and 56 into Elemental Defender, reducing damage taken from frost, flame frost, and shock damage by 12%. Remember, our minor damage reduction will apply to these two. So, moving on over here, we have 40 into Bastion and 15 into Quick Recovery to give us another 4%. We have an 8% healing received now because of this 4% and the 4% on the 1. Normally I have 19 here, and I have 31 in here. But I put this up to 37 to give me 15, because with this here, I get a 35% damage reduction from damage over time effects. Moving on to the green tree, we have 56 into Warlord, reducing break free cost by 20%. 21 into Sprinter, reducing our sprint cost by 13%. 27 into Bashing Focus, because I do bash a lot with this build, reducing my bash cost by 16%. I usually have 23 into both, and I'll show you why real quick. With 23 into both, you get 14%. So I'm just going to leave that there, and we'll find a place for those two other points. 43 into Arcanist, increasing your magic recovery by 10%, and 43 into Tenacity, increasing your stamina return from fully charged heavy attacks by 10%. We do a lot of heavy attacks. So your rotation, you don't really have a rotation. This is more of an act-react situation type build, kind of like a tank. Moving on, take the one out of Befoul. We're going to take this up to 26. We have 56 into Tumbling. This reduces our dodge roll cost by 20%, and 26 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block cost by 11%. We don't block a lot of attacks, guys. We do certain ones, but our shields will absorb most of them. We have an insane amount of shields here. So, moving on, we have 43 into Bless. This increases the healing done by 10%. We have 43 into Elemental Expert. This increases Flame Frost, Shock, and Magic damage by 10%. So it does increase the Ice ability by so much, and then we have another 2% on top of it. Next, we have Spell Erosion. We have 39 points in here, giving us a 3,315 spell penetration. So this is where we get our spell pen at. We don't get a lot of it, but we do get enough. Elfborn does help, but we don't have a high enough crit to make it really, really worthwhile. Moving on, we have 16 into Weapon Expert. This increases our light attack damage with two-handed and bow by 10%, and then 40 into Mastered Arms, increasing our direct damage done by 16%. Moving on over here, we have 43 into Mighty, increasing our physical poison disease damage by 10%. 23 into Precise Strikes, increasing our critical heals. That's why one of the reasons why I use Rally is a better heal, because we can crit heal with it more often. And then 23 into Thaumaturge, increasing our damage done with damage over time effects by 10%. So, pretty good standard setup for this type of a build. But we're going to go ahead and put that Rally back on the bar. So when we go down here to face this boss encounter, which we're going to do right now, so you guys can see this build in action for yourselves. This build is made for things like this, for taking on world bosses, especially really challenging ones like this one. If you guys haven't seen this, you will now. This thing is got some insane just some insane ads in it. And they don't stop. Once you get through the initial ads, they just keep coming, and more ads will just keep spawning. And by the way, Ice Heart procs off of any crits. And like I said, you have so many shields with this that you can pretty much just take this on solo. And I haven't even popped my Bone Shield yet. If I pop my Bone Shield, I go to 30k shields. And with 25k health pretty much, you have like 40, 50k let me go ahead and get some damage reduction going here. There he goes, there's the boss. He just spawned. And like I said, once you kill these guys, the boss will continue to spawn ads. Usually. There he goes. There he's summoning them now. And the more and more ads will just keep spawning. So this is a really good fight to show the worth of this build. Because even once you kill the ads, he will keep spawning ads, so... And he has a really powerful ground dot, so try to stay out of that if you're gonna try and prove your worth on this guy, because this guy will definitely, he will hold you up to your resources. Trust me on that. And these guys got a lot of ground stuff, and it's just crazy. But yeah, that's pretty much the build, guys. That's how it works. It's, like I said, it's probably not the most powerful build I've ever made, but it's definitely powerful enough. And like I said, if you want to, you can still use the Polar Winds as a heal and just keep the Betty Netch on the back bar. And Polar Winds is still a very powerful heal. I'll show you guys here in a second. Let me get out of combat so you guys can see for yourselves. And this happened to me the other day where I had to run like a mile. There we go. Now he does it. So Polar Winds is still a nice heal. The only problem is like I said, it's not quite as powerful as Rally. As you can see, 669 health. It's not a lot. But that nice burst heal it can offer is really good. And it gives you a Magicka, something to spend that 17k Magicka on. Because this just isn't... You're not casting this constantly. You're casting it until it wears off. Once it wears off, then you recast it. So you still have time to pop Polar Winds. But that, guys, is the Death Knight. And like I said, this thing's a solo beast. It really is. I've soloed the... Let's see. I soloed this boss. This boss I got help from Dolphy. So thank you, Dolphy, if you're watching this. It was an awesome fight. It took us a little bit to figure out the functionality of it and the mechanics, but this is an awesome boss up here. If you do this, make sure you have a group of 2 or 3 people who are well understanding of its mechanics, because this one's an interesting one. I'm not gonna give any spoilers. But I did solo several other world bosses. I did test this in a bunch of dungeons, and including Dragonstar Arena and Maelstrom Arena. Maelstrom Arena, I made it to like the 4th round and just gave up because I didn't want to spend my time in there with doing it. So I'm pretty sure this build can make it through Maelstrom Arena pretty easily. It's a pretty, like I said, it's a pretty beastie build. But yeah, that is the Death Knight, guys. I hope you guys like it. If you do, like button. If you guys want to see more builds videos by me, because I got 15 more coming out this week, all the way through Sunday. So 2 builds a day, guys, starting with Warden today. So, like I said, if you guys want, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.